It would cut it out. Yeah. So we're going old school today. Throw back to 2021 and see how we do with it. All right, folks, here we go. Shabbat Shalom. All right. We are on page 194. First, to offer thanks for our bodies, that they work well enough to enable each of us to be here this morning or joining online. And then we'll turn the page and move right into the prayer for our soul, that special piece of us that animates our body and enables us to be who we are. We join together on page 194. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before your throne of glory that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously. Baruch atah Adonai, rofei chol basar umafli la'asot. And at the bottom of page 197, my soul came to me pure, drawn from the reservoir of the holy. All the time it remains within me. I am thankful for its thirst for compassion and justice. Let my eyes behold the beauty of all creatures. Let my hands know the privilege of righteous deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, asher biyado nefesh kol chai, v'ruach kol basar ish. On page 198, start our Nisim B'chol Yom, a series of blessings for miracles we see in our lives each day. Rather than chanting every single word of Hebrew, as we often do in this space, I'd like to invite you to take just a moment in silence to choose one thing that has happened in your day today for which you are deeply grateful. So we'll go back in time a few hours to when we woke up and play through this time in our mind and offer a silent prayer of thanks. We continue with that gratitude in our hearts on page 204 for the blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So this prayer is here each and every day, not just on Shabbat, as a reminder that we are meant to engage not just with gratitude for our body, not just gratitude for our souls and gratitude in general, which we move through, but with the engagement of Torah or of learning in the broadest sense. As those who were in Torah study this morning are aware, we are in one of these unusual places in Jewish time where, in fact, much of the Jewish world is observing a second day of Shavuot today. So if you're conservative or Orthodox, today is still part of Shavuot. If you are Reform or perhaps in the land of Israel, today is just Shabbat. So we have, is very unusual, happens a handful of times during the year. And it's particularly unusual when one of the second days of the holiday where we have this exception falls on Shabbat. So we had a choice, let's say, about whether or not we wanted to preview next week's Torah portion or hold on just a little bit longer to Shavuot's Torah portion. Today, we're going to hold on to Shavuot just a bit longer because we read the Ten Commandments on Shavuot, and they're just really cool and special. So next week, we'll read Parashat Naso. Eversmith and Danica, who will become B'nai Mitzvah, have much to say on the matter. We will hold off just a little bit longer. Later on, dive into the Ten Commandments one more time. We turn to page 224 for Chatzi Kaddish, transitioning from our warm-ups to the service itself. Yitkadav, yitkadash, merabah. V'yamad yivarach yireutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei l'chol Beit Yisrael. V'agalo v'zman kariv v'yimru. Amen. V'yehei shemei rabbah mevarach. Le'olam yadei. Yitbarach v'yishabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitala shemei dekutsha v'richu le'elamin kol birchata v'shirata tushvachata v'nechemata damiran be'olema v'miru. Amen. Baruch on page 228, we acknowledge God as creator. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha berachamim uvtuvo mechadesh bechol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai kulam bechokma asita mal'ah haaretz kinyanecha titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha ve'al me'ore or she'asita yefa'arucha sela or chadash al tzion ta'ir v'nizkeh chulanu mehera le'oro Baruch atah Adonai yotzer ha'me'orot. Love your neighbor as yourself, you said, and light blinded we saw that inner and outer worlds are one, as you are one. You spoke and we wrote, we reached for you down the centuries, your light moving before us, as we climbed, fell back, and climbed again, your Sinai of life. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levanecha, vidibarta pam, vishivtecha bevetecha, uvlechtecha vaderech, ushochbecha ukumecha, ukshartam leot al yadecha, vehayu letotafot bein einecha, uchtamtam. Amizuzot beitecha uvishe'arecha lema antizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'Elohim, ani Adonai Elohechem. And as we prepare to sing the words of Mi Chamocha, we read together at the top of page 239. Emet, there is no place where you are not. Even in the wilderness, there is your word. Emet, that pen strokes of lightning, white fire, black flame, stir the soul's passion, guide our sacred way. True and enduring is Torah. Your truth for us is certain and established now and forevermore. Like Moses, Miriam, and all Israel, we sing out and rejoice. Yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai yai lai 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 yai lai lai lai. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osefele, nora tehilot osefele. Shir chadasha shivechu geulim, leshimcha sifat hayam, yachad Odu vehimlichu ve'amiru Adonai himloch le'olam va'ed Adonai himloch le'olam va'ed Yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai lai Yai lai 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 yai lai lai yai lai lai Su Yisrael kuma be'ezrat Yisrael ufetechinu mecha Yehuda v'Yisrael Go'aleinu Adonai Tzevaot Shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. Adonai sifatai tifta u'pniya tehilatecha. Adonai, my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotinu ve'imoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor El Elyon, going Tovim, Ve'onei Ha'ol, Ve'zocher Chasei Avot V'imot, U'mevi Geula Livnei Ma'an Shemo Ve'ahava, Melech Hoser U'Moshiach U'Malchim. Baruch atah Adonai ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai mechayei hakol atara le'Mashiach mori atah mechalkel chayim b'chesed mechayei hakol b'rachamim rachim. So mechnofeli verofei olim u'matir asri u'mehayim rato l'shem tava b'chamocha b'rot u'midon melach Melachini to Mechayim, U'matzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman ata l'hachayota. Baruch atah Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam Keshem shemoti shimoto b'shmei marom Kakatuv al-Yodiecha V'kara ze el ze ve'amar Kadosh Adonai Sevaot Melech Adir Adirenu Adonai Adir Shemcha b'chol haaretz Baruch Elohai B'komo echad hu Eloheinu Hu Avinu hu Malkeinu Yoshi'enu Yashneinu Elochana Ve'imei Imloch Adonai Elohai Elohai Sion Ledor Hallelujah Ledor Badulagi Kodecha Unitzach Nitzachim Kirishatcha Nakish V'shivchacha Elohim Le'olam Va'ed Baruch atah Please be seated. On page 250, we have the words of Yismachu. So the fourth blessing in the Amidah. On Shabbat, we have 7 blessings. On weekdays, we have 19. On holidays, we have other numbers. And the fourth blessing is always to anchor us in the day, in time and space. So this fourth blessing, and the way we treat it here at Temple Bethel, we sing Yismachu as a way of acknowledging that today is Shabbat. Now, in Jewish modes, there are 3 different prayer modes that are used throughout traditional Jewish liturgical music, okay? When we think about Western music, we have 2 primary modes. What are they? Major and minor, right? We have happy birthday to you, major, and what's a nice swing low, sweet chariot. Why is that what came to my mind? I don't know. But that's an example of something minor. Actually, it's major. What's a good minor something? My brain is not in the land of the minor today. Something. My child is giving me the most vigorous side eye. Something minor. We'll sing happy birthday minor. Happy, here's an example. A, B, C, I can't do it. I used to sing the ABCs in the early part of the pandemic in minor, just to, infuriate my children. Okay, we can't come up with anything in minor, not any of us, but we know what we're talking about. In Jewish prayer, there's actually a mode that is related to major. It's not really major. And there's a mode that's related to minor, not really minor. We don't have to talk about why that is because it's quite technical. But there's something else in between that is, from a technical standpoint, sort of major and minor at the same time. And if you put wherever to put a piece of music, like piano music, in front of someone who's never had exposure to Jewish music, it sort of makes their brains hurt a little bit because you think it should function one way and it really doesn't. And that mode is called Ahava Rabbah. And that is the mode for Yismachu. It is the mode for Micha Mocha when we sing it using the traditional melody, not the Debbie Friedman melody, which was entirely for your benefit that we sang Debbie Friedman's melody today. And the reason it's called Ahava Rabbah is if we were to chant this whole Siddur according to traditional modes, Ahava Rabbah would be the first prayer in the service where we brought the mode to the congregation. So, da da di da 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 dum dum, right? It sounds very, very Jewish. It's very Jewish. And if you were to harmonize it, if you were to play chords underneath of it, that very opening statement would have a major chord, but it sounds minor to our ears. And this is why it's a little confusing. It's sort of neither here nor there. Okay, we're going to sing Yismachu. My point in sharing all of this is that it's a happy song. It sounds kind of sad, but actually the intention is that it is extremely joyful. Right? And sometimes that takes a little bit of an adjustment for our Western trained musical sensibilities to appreciate that this is what joy sounds like in Jewish music. And for our B'nai Mitzvah students, for many, many, many years, I have historically defaced their binders on the page of Yismachu with many smiley faces, so that they in fact know that it's a happy song, all about the joy of Shabbat, all about what is possible when we take time to rest and take care of ourselves and engage in the beauty of the world. Here we go. Yismechu v'malechutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat, V'korei Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat, V'korei Oneg Shabbat. Mekadeshei, Mekadeshei Shvi'i. Kulam yisbehu v'yitan v'mituvecha Shabbat yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat V'korei oneg Shabbat yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat V'korei oneg Shabbat V'hashvi'i ratzita bo v'kidashto Emdad yamim oto karata Shabbat Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat V'korei oneg Shabbat Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat V'korei oneg Shabbat Zecher l'maaseh v'reshit Zecher l'maaseh v'reshit Shabbat Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat V'korei oneg Shabbat Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat V'korei oneg Shabbat Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh Shabbat. We take time for silent prayer and reflection, either using the words on the pages or the words in our hearts. Shalom. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Elohim, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Romimu Adonai. Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu v'har kodsho romimu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu v'har kodsho. All right. So as I mentioned, we're going to chant the Ten Commandments in just a moment. We have in the cycle of the year, 10 Commandments come from Parashat Yitro in the book of Exodus, and we read them again on Shavuot. And we heard them on Thursday night, rather. We're going to do it one more time. But as we prepare to do that, I want to share with you some of the insight of Rabbi David Kasher, whose book I have been enjoying on the recommendation of Rabbi Erdheim. And this is, new to my library this year after her arrival at Temple. And it's just a lovely, easy way to engage with some insight into each week's Torah portion, if that is of interest to you and you need a new book in your library. One of the points that he brings forward is by way of Rashi, and this is from his commentary on Yitro, not necessarily for Shavuot, which is the question that he asks about the description of God's presence as the 10 Commandments are revealed. Okay, so we're not reading this part. Where we're going to pick up in our reading will be just moments after this verse, which says that God descended on the mountain and on Mount Sinai, and that the mountain was ablaze, and that it was as if smoke rose from the mountain like a furnace. Okay, very specifically, like a furnace. Oh my gosh. Like that level of detail is unexpected. And Rashi chooses in this moment to say, by the way, this is a metaphor, essentially, I'm paraphrasing. And what Rabbi Kasher asks is why, of all the metaphors and all of the Torah, all the time when Torah is using descriptive metaphoric language, why in this moment, all the way in the book of Exodus, does Rashi finally say, by the way, this is a metaphor? And not only that, earlier in the Torah, that same descriptor as a furnace is also used one other time to describe the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. So again, if you're going to say, by P.S., this is a metaphor, why not have said that then? Why wait till now? And the point that is made in Parshanat is that it is incredibly important to our understanding of what God may be, to make sure that we understand in this moment that Torah speaks in metaphor, because it says really clearly that God descended upon the mountain, right? And that the intention is to understand that is meant to be figurative, right? That is to help us understand that we don't, even our ancient ancestors of the Torah do not behold God's presence. It is meant to be interpreted, right? So that we don't see or begin to sew together these pieces of our cognition that think that God can be seen or touched. Thoughts?
So, saying that all is a metaphor in the Torah as opposed to literal.
Yes. Well, he's saying that there are. Right. And that we accept that metaphor happens throughout the Torah, because we think of other examples. God redeemed us from Egypt with a mighty arm, and we were brought out on eagle's wings, right? We don't think that that's true. We accept those as literary devices, just without giving it a second thought. But the intention here is to underscore that even when Torah says God was physically there, that is not meant to be understood metaphorically, just as the other times. Right. Yes, you're pretty close to idols. In fact, don't go back. So even where it says that God descended upon the mountain, that we're meant to dig more deeply into what that may mean, not in a literal sense. So we're going to chant the 10 Commandments because they're super cool. And now something that is unique about the chanting, actually, can anyone tell us what is unique about the chanting of the 10 Commandments compared to many other Torah portions? Any ideas? My Torah reading scholars in the room? No, not yet. Okay. So, ladies who are preparing to chant from Torah for your bat mitzvah, what I want to tell you is that all three of the people in the front row as adults have read from the Torah this year. Actually, that is a true statement. And Robin, because I like to brag about you, Robin, I'm not overselling it. We're using you to set an example for future generations. Robin, as a grown-up, decided, now as a younger grown-up, tell me if I'm getting this right. As a younger grown-up, you engaged in figuring out how to chant Torah from the Torah, right? From the actual symbols, not just from a recording. But as a more recent grown-up, you decided to dust off your skills and become quite proficient, let's say, in Torah chanting, which is a huge accomplishment and something that I think is really admirable. And I share this because while you are learning your Torah portion in a way that is designed to get you stress-free as possible, successfully to your bat mitzvah, in fact, perhaps later in your life, you might want to learn how to do it. And we all have the ability to learn new things, not just when we're 12, but when we're, grown-ups, in fact. So what is unique about the 10 Commandments, this is the only section of Torah in the entirety of Torah that has two sets of trope marks. Okay, so the trope marks, the way that we chant the Torah portion, which is more than just music, it's grammar, right? It brings grammar to the words. All I see here as I look at the Torah are words. There's no punctuation. There's no indication of where a chapter begins or ends. And the trope are the periods, commas, exclamation points, and it communicates it to us orally so that we can hear it and understand which words belong together and which don't. So the Ten Commandments have two sets of trope, the what are called the lower trope and the upper trope. And that is not meant to be that one set is better and one set is worse. It is simply a descriptor that in the set that are called the lower trope, most of them are on the bottom of the word. And the set that's called the upper trope, most of those trope happen to appear on the tops of the words. Fine. And what is functionally different about them is that the lower trope are intended for study. They're intended for, you are interested in understanding Torah and you come to it and you're supposed to use these lower trope for your own day-to-day understanding. And it divides the Ten Commandments into normal sentences, right? So through this whole section, there are many, many sentences. And when you're engaging with it on a regular day, you're supposed to read it with normal sentences. However, when you read 10 Commandments in public, like we do today, like we do on Shavuot, like we do when Yitro comes up at some point in the winter, we read them as 10 sentences, each commandment as their own individual statement. So like, for instance, the commandment around keeping Shabbat it's like a paragraph, right? There are many sentences, were we to break it into nice grammar, contained within the commandment around keeping Shabbat, but the way that we read it in public is simply one statement on Shabbat. Okay, yes? And the other thing I will say about this before Robin is gonna be my spotter again in my tricky, complicated book that is complicated for all the reasons I just articulated, is that this is definitely the hardest Torah portion to chant in the entire Torah, just from the standpoint of the way that the patterns are combined. It's like kind of tricky. So for those who want to grow in this way, let's say, this is a very good one to learn to hone your skills. Yes, that was a strong suggestion to the folks of the front row. And the other Torah portion that is quite unique like this in the cycle of reading, it actually comes the week prior and also gets a repeat on a holiday. Okay, so in the cycle of reading, this is Yitro. The week prior to Yitro is Beshalach. And that Torah portion is the Song of the Sea, where we get the words of Mi Chamocha. And that has an inherited melody that's interwoven with the trope. And that's also a very special skill set. And Howard Seidler decided that he wanted to know that Torah portion. And he learned that Song of the Sea maybe 8 years ago. And now he always chants it when it comes up as part of the holiday on the last day of Passover. So this one's going to come up every Shavuot. That's all I'm saying, and that there's room if someone else wanted to take on one of the special Torah portions. All right. Yes. So what's special, and I can actually show you. Why don't you all, I'm going to invite you up since, this is my second to last Saturday morning service here. So why the heck not? Come on up.
I'm going to try not to.
Are you serious? I said that with that tone to my own child, if you're watching on the internet and you don't know. Hang on, I'm going to show you Shirat Hayam just because we're so close. And Alan asked. So I rolled back a little bit because Alan asked the question and I would love the privilege of showing you. Here, come look at this.
Yeah.
So this is where we get the words of Mi Chamocha. Here they are. Mi Chamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi Chamocha nedar ba'kodesh, Nora tehilot osefele. We just sang that today. And here's Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, right? Which is all part of Mi Chamocha. Anyhow, it's written, of course, to look like bricks. And the parts that are part of this section, that is the poem, is believed by biblical scholars to be one of the oldest parts of the Torah linguistically. The Hebrew is more ancient. And there is another song towards the end that similarly has particularly ancient Hebrew. What's unique about this, and it looks kind of smushy unless you get close, but you'll see that this scroll is extremely rare, and it has these bonus crowns, and it's not a smudge. I mean, if you were to come to this with a magnifying glass, you would see that each one grows exponentially off of each dot. Then there's like a branch of 3 and a branch of 3 and a branch of 3. And this Torah is part of the scribal tradition of the Maharal of Prague. And the fact that we have this Torah, which is the Diamond family's Torah, is very special. But this scribe did really remarkable, unusual, special work through this section. Okay, so that's Micha Mocha. And then if we roll 1 week over, we're going to get to the 10 Commandments, which you can also always see at a glance because you have don't at the end. And if you look in the ark in this chapel, you can see our don'ts on the second half of our commandments. All right, I would love everyone to join together for the blessing. Here we go. Baruch Hu Adonai Hamarach, Baruch Adonai Le'olam Ha'ed, Baruch Adonai Le'olam Ha'ed, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher barakanu mikol ha'amim, v'natamanu et Torah. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen. Anochi Adonai Elohecha Asher Hotzeticha Me'eretz Mitzrayim Mibeit Avadim Lo Yihye Lecha Elohim Acherim Al Panai Lo Ta'aseh Lecha Fesel V'chol Timunah Asher Bashamayim Mimal Va'asher Ba'aretz Mitachat Va'asher B'mayim Mitachat La'aretz Lo Tishtachaveh Lahem V'lo To'ovdeim Ki Anochi Adonai Elohecha Elkanah Poked Avon Avot Al Banim Al Shileshim Ve'al Ribeim Lisonei Ve'oseh Chesed L'Alafim Le'ohavai Ulshomrei Mitzvotai Lo Tisa Et Shem Adonai Elohecha Lashav Ki Lo Yenakeh Adonai Et Asher Yisa Et Shemo Lashav Zachor Et Yom HaShabbat Lekadesho Sheshet Yamim Tavod Ve'asita Chol Melachtecha Ve'yom HaShvi'i Shabbat L'Adonai Elohecha Lo Ta'aseh Chol Melacha Ata Uvincha Uvitecha Avdecha V'amatecha Uvhemtecha V'gerecha Asher B'she'arecha Ki Sheshet Yamim Asa Adonai Et HaShamayim Ve'et HaAretz Et Hayam Ve'et Kol Asher Bam Vayanach Vayom HaShvi'i Alkein Berach Adonai Et Yom HaShabbat Vayekadeshehu Kabed Et Avicha Ve'et Imecha Lema'an Yarichun Yamecha Al Hadama Asher Adonai Elohecha Notein Lach Lo Tirtzach Lo Tin'af Lo Tignov Lo Ta'aneh Re'echa Et Shaker Lo Tachmod Beit Re'echa Lo Tachmod Eshet Re'echa V'avdo va'amato v'shoro v'chamoro v'chol asher l're'echa Baruch Adonai Elohim asher natan v'chayei olam v'tofim Baruch Adonai Name. Thank you all. Thank you. Yeah, I got all the spots I missed on Thursday this time.
And I would say that, and I didn't have lost.
That was an improved for both of us, Robin. So the other piece of that, of like my personal connection to that Torah portion is that was my bat mitzvah Torah portion. However, I grew up in a synagogue that did not chant Torah. So I just read it. Like it was a classical reform synagogue. I'd never heard Torah chanted in my life before I came to this synagogue. So I read all those words and I very distinctly remember, some of the things I thought the word sounded like. Anyway, yes, I remember my 13-year-old, 12-year-old thoughts about it. And then I see you. I'll tell my own story. I know exactly what you're trying to do. I just want you to know that. I will tell my own story. After I tell a positive story, I'll then tell a negative story. This is all.
You just read, and that's what we just read.
All of that. I read those words. Yes. Yes. I didn't even know trope existed until I came here. Yeah, I never. Yeah, not at all. Classical reform. That's interesting. I'm going to make an educated guess. So, the classical reformers were quite concerned with not seeming this is their word, Oriental, right? They didn't want to seem too Eastern. They wanted they wanted decorum. They wanted to seem as much a part of the mainstream Protestant for them society as possible. And the classical reformers, had no room for traditional cantorial music. And my guess is that Torah cantillation likely fell in the same bucket. So when I came here as a 22-year-old, one of my first orders of business from Cantor Bernard was to learn to chant Torah. So I sat with this book, this book that I still give to everybody in my apartment for a week and figured out how to do it. And then, he said, well, now you'll learn to chant the 10 Commandments, because if you can do that, then you can really do it. And that was my test to pass out of cantillation when I got to HUC. So yes, it is worth doing if it is something of interest to you. The story Johanna wants me to tell is one that I shared with her and have on occasion shared with other students as an example of what I hope you don't do, which is that I am certain, I'm 100% positive that my childhood rabbi wrote my bat mitzvah speech for me. I'm positive, though the memories are fuzzy. I know that my bat mitzvah speech had an extended baseball metaphor in it, and there's no way that I ever would have written an extended baseball metaphor. No, there's no possible way. So while I'm certain that I learned my Torah portion and I'm certain that I did a whole bunch of other things, I'm not certain that I wrote my own speech. So don't be like me. That's the point of the story. Yes. Okay, we rise as we return the Torah to the Ark. We'll continue with the words of Aleinu on page 586. Aleinu l'shamei la'adon hakol, la'teit gedula li'yotzer b'reshit, Shalom, my son, you keep my consort. The Lord you Shalom, you Please be seated. The words of Mourner's Kaddish are on page 598. During the period of Shloshim, the first 30 days after their death, our congregation remembers Ken Faberman, Darlene Gill-Martin, and Judith Sass. And at their yahrzeit, the anniversary of their death, we recall Judith Abraham, Beatrice Abrams, Louis Bernstein, Stella Cardoza, Helen Wolfert Cohen, James P. Conway, Ethabel Green Corwin, Patty Deaton, Irma DiNicola, Clara Glickman, Arthur Goldstein, Louis Gordon, Estelle Gottesfeld, Myrna Hirsch, Alice Holtzman, Susan Jacobson, Myron Jacobson, Aaron Jaffe, Sam Kanarek, Lily Katz, Michael Kehoe, Eleanor Littauer, Arthur Stillman McDonald, Karen Starr Marks, Rosalind Mendelson, Jenny Mendelson, Jay Millman, Gerald Mittler, Samuel Opperman, Norman Lewis Perlmutter, Joseph Rosenbaum, Ann Dina Rosenberg, Miriam Rosenblum, Jean Rosker, Dolores Rothkopf, Florence Rothman-Deutscher, Ida Ruck, Jeanette Sachs, Ruth Sedinsky, Morris Schoenberg, Helen Schwartz, Deborah Schwerin, Israel Siegel, Shirley Rifkin Simons, Louis Smolin, Joseph Spielman, Ida Rose Sternstein, Eve Stewart, Frederick Stiefel, Aileen Strauss, Charles Supero, Zvi Warschenbrot, Lee Wiesenthal, and Larry Werschbell. On this Memorial Day weekend, I imagine that there are many we hold in our hearts in particular. We take a moment to think of them and rise as a congregational family for the words of Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma tivarach irutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye d'chol beit Yisrael, b'agala uvizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lamei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha b'richu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh Aseh Shalom. Aleinu v'al Yisrael. Amen. May all their memories be for a blessing. Shabbat Shalom.